The following is a production of the University of Minnesota, driven to discover.
Hi, this is David Arundale, your host for Peer Assisted Learning Groups podcast. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Beginning with this podcast episode, we start airing interviews with study group program coordinators and their student study group leaders from over 20 colleges in Australia, Canada, and the United States. These episodes will likely occur between April and September of 2021. Then a new series will be recorded later in 2021 and be aired in 2022. The pattern will be to group together the program coordinator and the student leaders from the same institution and then release them as a series. 2 episodes will air each week. I will record some podcast episodes in between these institutional series with research updates from me concerning what I'm learning about peer learning. In part 1 of a 6-part series, we feature an interview with Dr. Laura Jacobi, a faculty member and program director for MavPass, their institutional name for supplemental instruction at Minnesota State University in Mankato. Dr. Jacobi's previously published research concerning online learning uniquely prepared her to transition the SI program, or as they call it, MavPass, to an online operation during spring of 2020. In addition to this audio episode, I also provide several other documents. First, a 1-page overview of their program. Second, a photograph of some of their student study group leaders. And finally, a profile of the institution. I hope you enjoy the series. Well, hi, everyone. We're here talking with Laura, and she's going to talk to us about her program here in the state of Minnesota. So welcome to the podcast, Laura.
Thank you.
Well, the first question is tell us a little bit about what is MavPass.
MavPass stands for Maverick, which we're the MSU Mavericks, and then PASS is an acronym for Peer Facilitated Academic Support System. So it's a peer facilitated academic support program.
And how long has that been operating at your campus? The name of your campus is again?
Oh, it's Minnesota State University, Mankato. And we started in fall of 2019. So this is our 4th semester, fairly new program.
And are you the founding director of the program?
Yes. What happened is the Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion was looking for ways on our campus to do a few things, to increase course success, to lower the DFW rates, to close opportunity gaps, and to better the retention rate. And so he was just searching around and found supplemental instruction model, was really interested in it, and brought experts from UMKC, the International Center for Supplemental Instruction, and hosted a workshop on our campus. And the deans each invited a few people from their colleges. I was one of the people who attended the workshop, and I was hooked. My whole background is teaching. I started out as a high school teacher and really very passionate about teaching. It's, I always say, my greatest passion in life. And I really loved the concept. I loved the idea of peer facilitated support. And because I'm so interested and passionate about pedagogy, I wanted to be involved, and I made that known that if a program starts on this campus, I'd like to be part of it. And so I was asked to develop the program. We started out in 5 courses as a pilot program with 17, we call them MavPass leaders. They're essentially SI leaders. And then we've grown. We've grown from 5 leaders to currently we have 5 courses. Currently, we have 18 courses and 41 leaders. And in the fall, we're expanding to around 25 courses and 60 leaders.
Well, that's quite a program in terms of the size and the breadth of the program. Then you talked about how you had such strong support from senior members of your institution then. Mm-hmm. I noticed in looking at your online materials that you also have a really strong scholarly part of your life, and you've published a great deal. What would be the core of your scholarship that has helped you to be able to lead this program?
Well, I think throughout my life, I tend to be a person who sort of capitalizes on opportunities that present themselves. Prior to this position, I was the basic course director in the communication department. So I supervised the TAs and supported them with teaching sections of the basic communication course. And for an example of looking into opportunities at the time, I noticed that international students would sometimes struggle, and I wanted to find ways to help them to succeed. So I started doing research on pairing international students with domestic students and working through semester projects and seeing the impact not only on in terms of pedagogy, but in terms of relationship building. And I think that research certainly helps me in a program in which we are supporting international students and students of color and other students who may be part of marginalized groups or groups who need additional types of support. And I also, like you mentioned earlier, I've done research in online learning. At the time that I did that research, I was just really interested in finding ways to be as effective online, to still build those connections, to build rapport with students, and for them to really be engaged, because I think that's more difficult online. And so certainly that research has helped me, especially in the times of COVID, since we had to move everything onto Zoom. So right now we're doing all of our peer facilitated sessions via Zoom.
Must have been quite a shock whenever the COVID crisis hit and you were given just a few days or a few weeks to make the transition from face-to-face to online.
Yes, it was crazy. I mean, it happened to be right around spring break, and then I think the governor had extended it a week or something. So we had a couple weeks to prepare, and in that time, I spent a lot of time learning everything I could about Zoom, and then met with all the leaders and basically trained them on the tools. And we talked about how can we implement the things you're doing in person in an online setting. And they were great. They really grasped it quickly and did a good job supporting students.
Well, with the enormous breadth of your program, this next question will seem probably a little simplistic. What are a couple of the favorite study session activities that you hear back from your leaders that they are using with their students? I realize that the strategies used also depend upon the academic content and the rigor and all the rest, so they can be very diverse. But what are a couple of the more popular ones that you hear from them?
I think in the problem-solving courses like physics and math, statistics, the board work model is a great one. I like that one personally. That's the one where you split a whiteboard into 4 columns, and the first column, you have a student facilitate conversation about prerequisite knowledge, like what's needed to solve a given problem. In the second column, you have a problem. The third column is where a student is explaining. So the second student in the second column is solving a problem, while the third student in the third column is kind of giving a narrative of what that student is doing in solving it. And then the fourth student offers another sample problem, and you can kind of recycle. I really like that one for problem solving courses because it's very interactive. It fits with the whole premise of peer facilitated learning and having the students engaged. I know a favorite one for the leaders with more conceptual material, Kahoot games, any of those interactive visual games where they can make learning more fun, which I also think those are great because just seeing information in a different context, I think reinforces it in a different way and maybe helps students to remember it when it comes time to taking a test. So those would be probably more common ones that are used.
Well, I'm sure there's a great diversity of approaches that are taken. I had the privilege of having a conversation with one of your leaders, Jose, here a little bit earlier this afternoon. And he shared one of the things that has been enormously helpful has been the requirement to go and observe another leader as they are conducting their program and allowing the observer to see a different perspective of how to approach a study review session.
Yeah, that's actually in my very first year of teaching. I decided I wanted to see what everyone else is doing. And it was probably the best thing I did as a teacher because even simple things, seeing how teachers do things in different ways that I never had thought of myself, just opened up a whole new toolbox for me. So every semester I require at least one peer observation, and they go and observe another leader. And then when we meet for one of our meetings, they discuss who they observed, what they observed, and then they talk about what they learned and what they could teach that person.
In addition to your professional training as an educator, the professional training that you received from the International Center for SI when they conducted the workshop, can you make a suggestion to your fellow study group program managers out there of a book or an author or an article that's been particularly helpful as you manage this program?
I don't know that I'd point to one specific article or book, but honestly, I would point people to the annotated bibliography that you created, which is like hundreds of pages and has so many amazing resources. That has been really useful because I've read articles from there that present new ideas to me. The other thing would be the SI listserv through UMKC, just the interaction and hearing from other SI directors what they're doing.
Maybe I can add to that. What would be one topic that you would recommend for others to study more about? Rather than looking at this from an article or an author, is there a particular topic? Like, is it about engagement? Is it cooperative learning? Is there some topic that you personally are somehow finding time to pursue as you are juggling all your responsibilities?
Honestly, I don't have a lot of time to read because it's a very busy job. But one topic that probably interests me more than maybe others is motivating students to come to the session, which is one of the greatest challenges, as I'm sure you know, especially students who struggle, because oftentimes the ones who struggle are the ones who are least likely to seek support, perhaps because they're so busy in their own lives. They're maybe non-traditional students working full-time, supporting family in other ways, so they just can't make the time. That's really difficult for me. I want to be able to support those students who really need it. I guess that's the area where I'm most interested in getting information.
Well, as we're drawing our time here to close, based on your experiences with the program, how have you grown personally and professionally?
I think in terms of leadership, that's something that I'm thinking about all of the time, being an effective leader and what that means. You know, I guess I've had quite a bit of experience now with leading undergraduates and graduate students. And another important part of my job as a faculty liaison is working with faculty and trying to find ways to best support them in the program and figure out how we can collaborate to best support their students. So, and you know, this just involves communication with everyone in the university at an administrative level, other support program directors, faculty, students, undergraduate students, and graduate. It's the kind of job where I guess I'm constantly thinking about how to be most effective in that role. And I think I've grown a lot and I'll continue to grow.
Well, as we finish up here, I'd just like to give you a chance to make a final comment to your peers who run and manage and lead these study group programs around the world.
Always keeping in mind the purpose, the goal of having the impact on the students, because I think sometimes, especially I'm noticing as our program continues to grow, I can get lost in the weeds because it's getting so big and there's so much more paperwork and logistical details to handle. And in those times when I get frustrated and caught up with all of that, I just have to remember why we're doing this. Because when I really think about why we're doing this and the impacts that we're having on students who maybe otherwise would fail their classes and leave the university, I get emotional over it because I just feel so good about what we're doing for students.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Laura, and best wishes to you, your wonderful students and your programs, and we wish you all well.
Thank you.